The gleaming spires of the Galactic Federation Academy rose like crystalline needles against the amber sky of Proxima Station. Inside one of its many training facilities, anxious murmurs rippled through a group of blue-skinned Tressalian drill surgeons as they huddled around a monitoring screen. "It's impossible," hissed Sergeant Mull, his triple-lidded eyes blinking rapidly in distress. "The human should have collapsed 2 hours ago." On the screen, a lone figure trudged across the scarlet desert of the Academy's notorious Proving Grounds, an obstacle course designed to test the physical and mental limits of recruits. The temperature outside had reached 65 degrees Celsius. No protective gear was allowed. Most species couldn't last more than 30 minutes in such conditions. The human cadet Thomas had been out there for nearly 5 hours. "Shut it down," ordered Commander Vec, the head of training. "This has gone too far." "We can't," replied Lieutenant Zinn, frantically tapping at the control panel. "The course protocols are automated. Once a cadet enters, they must either complete the course or signal for extraction. The human hasn't done either." Thomas had arrived at the Academy 3 standard months ago, one of only 5 humans ever accepted. Humans came from Earth, classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet with such extreme conditions that most galactic species considered it uninhabitable. The Federation had been reluctant to admit humans into their ranks, but political pressure to include all sentient species had prevailed. The drill surgeons had expected, perhaps even hoped, that Thomas would wash out within days. Instead, the human had endured every challenge with stubborn determination, though never excelling beyond mid-tier performance. Until today. The Proving Grounds represented the final test before cadets advanced to specialist training. It was a grueling trek across 30 kilometers of artificially maintained desert, with randomly generated hazards, limited water, and no shade. The record completion time was 8 hours, set by a Chronaxian warrior whose species evolved on a planet with 3 suns. "Look," gasped Sergeant Mull, pointing at the screen. Thomas had reached the final checkpoint. The human's skin was bright red, blistered from some exposure. Sweat had long since stopped flowing, a dangerous sign for most species, but apparently not for humans. Instead of collapsing at the checkpoint to signal completion, Thomas bent down, picked up the regulation pack that awaited all cadets who reached this point, and kept going. "What is it doing?" Vec demanded. "The test is over." "The human is." Continuing to the bonus section, Lieutenant Zinn whispered, voice barely audible. The bonus section wasn't mandatory. It was 10 additional kilometers through even harsher terrain, including a rock climb up a sheer cliff face. In the Academy's 50-year history, only 3 cadets had ever attempted it. None had completed it. "This is madness," Commander Vec muttered. "Contact medical. Have a team standing by." 2 more hours passed. The drill surgeons remained glued to the monitor, their usual disciplined demeanor forgotten. Some had even placed unofficial wagers on how far the human would make it before requiring extraction. Then, impossibly, Thomas appeared at the summit of the cliff. "Federation's mercy," Mull whispered, "it's still going." By now, word had spread throughout the station. Senior officers and cadets from other training divisions crowded into the monitoring room. The Academy's director herself arrived, her crystalline carapace clicking with agitation. "Explain this," she demanded. Commander Vec could only shake his head. "Humans are different, Director." On screen, Thomas staggered toward the final beacon, a simple post marking the absolute end of the course. No cadet in history had ever reached it. The human's movements were jerky, uncoordinated. Multiple bio-alerts flashed on the secondary screens. "Medical team to extraction point Alpha, immediately," ordered the director. Thomas touched the beacon. A chime sounded through the monitoring system, indicating course completion. The human collapsed. When the medical team arrived, they found something that would forever change the Federation's understanding of humanity. Thomas was conscious, barely but smiling. "Did I pass?" the human croaked through cracked, bleeding lips. Later, in the medical bay, the Academy's chief physician delivered her report to a stunned audience of senior staff. "Humans don't just endure, she explained, gesturing to the readouts above Thomas's bed. They're designed to push beyond their limits. When most species reach physiological failure, they stop. Humans don't. They have biological mechanisms that activate specifically under extreme stress. You mean they get stronger when they should be dying? Asked Beck incredulously. In a manner of speaking, yes. They call it their second wind. More remarkably, this human deliberately induced a state of what they call runner's high, a neurochemical response that blocks pain signals and produces euphoria during extreme exertion. The director's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Are all humans capable of this? To varying degrees, yes. Their survival on their death world depended on persistence hunting, literally chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. The Federation had classified humans as a minor species from a backwater planet. But now they had to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had admitted into their ranks a species that did not understand the concept of surrender. 2 days later, the Academy's training protocols were completely revised. New guidelines were established for human cadets. And in the barracks, the other cadets looked at Thomas, still recovering but already asking when training would resume, with a mixture of awe and unease. The human merely smiled, already looking forward to the next challenge. The drill surgeons never panicked visibly again, but whenever a human cadet approached a testing ground, they made sure the medical teams were on standby and the monitoring systems were recording. After all, humanity's introduction to the galactic community had only just begun.